So let me tell you a little bit about differential discounting. It's also in the course. Let's start with stating that there is no discussion on the use of discounting in cost effectiveness analysis and health economic analysis. It's in all the guidelines all over the world, and typically the discount rate, which corrects for time preference. Typically, you should think of discount rates in the realm of what we know from the past for interest rates. 4% discount rate, 3%, 2.5%. This is the typical numbers. Discounting is non-disputed, as said, because it corrects, and we think that should be for uncertainty. We are more certain about the present than about the future. It corrects for when it concerns the costs and the savings, the money part. It corrects for economic growth. The richer we are, the less value we attach to a specific amount of money. It corrects for economic growth, as said, and concerning health, it corrects for growth in life expectancy, with the same argument as for economic growth and potentially growth in quality of life. The discussion is, as said, on the exact level of the discount rate to be used. I won't go into detail there. In the course, there is a reference to the paper by Klok et al. This paper shows ways to, actually one way to estimate the exact level of the discount rate, obviously, or maybe not obviously, but you could imagine, I guess, that it in a way it's more easy to calculate the discount rate from the financial world than the discount rate for health. Maybe because of this argument, and that is the core of this speech, differential discounting versus equal discounting. Almost all countries in the world use equal discounting. It is relatively straightforward, as you can see in the paper by Klok, how to calculate the discount rate from the financial world. And it's more difficult to do it for qualies, for example, and therefore many countries use, say, let's use the one from the financial world also for the health part of the cost effectiveness analysis. And this is equal discounting, the same discount rate for money and for health. There are ways to calculate the discount rate for health separately. And as you can imagine, this will not always lead to exactly the same percentage as for finance, also illustrated in the Klok et al. Paper. Only very few countries take the approach of differential discounting, meaning a different discount rate for qualies than for finance, for money. Only very few do that. The Netherlands is an example. The Baltic states, our neighbors here in the Netherlands, Belgium, they use differential discounting, but really a strong minority of the countries in the world do this. Countries that use equal discounting generally refer to a paper, which is also in the course by Keeler and Crétin, as an argument to use equal discounting. Keeler and Crétin, in their paper, they show, using a complex mathematical approach, that if you use differential discounting, you end up in inconsistencies. You end up in a situation that actually cost effectiveness becomes better every year you postpone a health program. And they say this will lead to postponement, endless postponement of healthcare programs, endless inertia. You don't take any action anymore. And of course, that is not doesn't sound very attractive. So maybe not do this differential discounting is what their argument is. I illustrate this in the course with not with the complex mathematical model, but with a quite straightforward example. The counter argument against this is that the idea of endless inertia, postponing healthcare programs, is not what we see in practice. It is not what you would expect governments to do. Governments spend their budgets, they don't hoard their budgets. So this whole argument of Keeler and Crétin in favor of equal discounting, is very theoretical. And that would be the counter argument against against any dislike of differential discounting. You do see now that more and more countries actually embark on differential discounting, and typically, and this is from a WHO paper and also from a few other papers, typically you would see that the discount rate for health is approximately half of the discount rate applied to money. For example, the Netherlands, money 4%, and health actually a bit less than half, 1.5%. There is a trend that more and more countries are now using differential discounting. And that is basically also the essence of my speech here, is to support a little bit your understanding of this discussion, differential discounting versus equal discounting. There is one aspect maybe to end this speech, and it's not yet in the guidelines. It's the issue of decreasing discounting. And if you do empirical work, and for example, we've published a paper on a sample of the general public, and we asked them the type of questions to find out the discount rate. Would you, if you have the choice between a certain amount of money now versus a certain amount of money 1 year in the future, what would you choose? And you investigate until you have, if you have until the person that you question is indifferent between the two. It could be 100 euros now and 104 euros now, and your discount rate would be 4% on the 1 year time horizon. If you do that on a 10-year time horizon or even further, you find that this 4%, as the example, actually decreases. The farther you go into the future, the lower the discount rate seems to be. Decreasing discounting, accumulating evidence that this is the case, from empirical research in particular, questioning the general public. But as said, you will not find, it has not found its way to the guidelines. The guidelines do not specify decreasing discounting, at least not in the base case. In sensitivity analysis, some guidelines now request that you would actually investigate in sensitivity analysis a decreasing discounting scenario, like 4% in the first 10 years, years 10 to 20, 3%, after that 20 to 30, 2%, etc., etc. But as said, not yet in guidelines. It may find its way in the coming decades into the guidelines. So to summarize this speech, discounting in itself, no dispute. It should be done. It's related to time preference, and it's there. It's a reality. The issue is equal discounting or differential discounting. Almost all countries in the world use equal discounting. There is a tendency that more and more countries shift to differential discounting. Wouldn't it be a huge coincidence if actually the discount rates for money and for health would be exactly the same? No, So you can imagine that this is not the case. So indeed, more and more countries are using differential, and for the coming decades, I expect that the discussion on decreasing discounting will also slowly find its way into the guidelines for health economic research.